In this Real Talk video, I'm going to share with you about balancing the masculine and feminine roles within yourself, how that links to different harmonization with other relationships, and how it's so important to have healthy communication to experience healthy relationships. Hello, fellow flames. In case we haven't met, my name is Dr. Harmony, and I will help you live fearless, live loved, and live free. If you're new to my channel, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. And make sure that if you have not already subscribed, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you know when all my videos and content come live. Today, I'm going to talk to you in this video about some really deep things in this Real Talk portion of my Real Talk series that is really me just coming here in a open, raw, real version of myself to talk about my experiences and what I'm going through or what I'm seeing. No particular agenda, just more that I know that it's something that probably a lot of you are experiencing, and if you are, then I would like to know about it. So today we're going to talk about, in this particular episode, we're going to talk about balancing the role reversals between our inner masculine and feminine energies, and then how that also links to the harmonization in the twin flame relationships. And in more detail of that, you can see a video I did last week on the twin flame balance of the masculine and feminine energies, and that harmonic relationships are on the horizon. So I'll make sure you have a link to that video below, somewhere on the card, and probably at the end of this, so that way you can get plugged in to more detail of that. One of the key things in this role is to think about that we, of course, have a twin flame that's basically our highest mirror, our greatest reflection, and the one that comes in and really helps to support and activate the light inside that connects us to more of all of who we are and that mission. With that being said, as we come into this integration of all of our fragments and our soul retrieval of all the parts and connecting to all those aspects, we're trying to find balance within. And finding that balance within, we can have our twin flame for sure be the primary teacher, but we can have other teachers and ascension teachers in our lives. And everyone is really our mirror. And at the end of the day, this all is about the reflection of yourself, regardless of the twin flame journey or not. It is a reflection journey, period, in life right now, especially because so many people are much more aware of what they're trying to see within themselves and how that relates to communication and connection and collaboration with other people. As we collect these fragments, what it's doing is it's showing us our lessons that we need to learn within. And that is to, in that bringing balance within ourselves, is really, at this stage of the game, really helping to get us in our primary role between our own inner feminine or inner masculine role that should be our primary role. So as a divine feminine, I'm really being forced to shift into my femininity and reverse my role from having been in masculinity. And that role reversal within yourself is huge. And I mean, we've all been going through that a lot. But my experience over the last couple months has been extreme. And with that, I've had a whole series of new teachers or bringing in old ones. That's bringing back teachers that are all coming in with like the same bam in my face. So I want to share that one with you because as we get ready to go into the Mercury retrograde, which is communication, from May 31st into June 21st, communication is the highlight of this harmonic balance of these relationships. And so basically, with that being said, then it's key that we learn to communicate our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions with these interactions within these relationships and these dynamics that we experience that are mirrored souls. And so with that being said, one of the key lessons that I didn't even know really existed, because I consider myself a very effective communicator, but when it comes down to the heart of communication, it's about being heard and listening. And it's about two people getting on the same wavelength of the same topic, of the same conversation, and being able to each listen and each be heard. And that also is a representation of expressing yourself versus suppressing yourself. For me, I had suppressed my entire life, all my deepest emotions that represent vulnerability and openness and sharing more authentically of who I am, even though I really thought I had that, and I do that, and I still do that, even coming here. There's more. And, I had a session with a client today, and we were talking about her goal was to kind of get to the end of this. And it's like, well, as long as we are in this role of learning in our soul, it's not going to exactly end. But what the key to know in that is that it's not that we have to dig stuff up to keep repeating patterns, it's we're actually implementing the new ways of how to do it. So becoming aware of these patterns, of these lessons, and what we're trying to correct, and in this case, the one I'm going to talk about is being heard and listening. It's about that's contrast, and it's finding the neutrality within the dynamic with another person to be able to both be balanced enough to hold space, which the twin flame relationships are going to have to do this. So you have to both be the listener and the one that can express, and to be heard, feel like you're heard in a dynamic before you can have the interchange with the other person. So I'm going to jump into some scenarios so this makes sense to you. So basically, as I just mentioned, I had suppressed basically my whole life. And in that suppression, I had gotten very vulnerable through my COVID experience a couple months ago. And I really felt like I was sending out a soul calling that was calling in my divine partner and that of the highest version of me. And in that, somebody showed up in order to support me from a place of having saw where I'd had COVID, offered friendship, offered an ear, and would be considered a master listener. And it was able to hold space. In fact, he had mentioned that that's kind of what he does for people, and had been told before he was like this portal that kind of like opened me up to like dump and kind of vomit like all this suppressed stuff out of me. But he also was very suppressed, and I was coming out of that. So, but he also had mastered the listening. But as we know, in the contrast of that, what that did was that opened up a space for me to express the most open, raw, real, vulnerable, and the heart of who I am to anyone ever in my life on a personal level. And his now reflection of my expression triggered his suppression, showing him he needed to start expressing. So in that regard, as he was trying to start to express, I was still hung up on my expression as well. I had not gave up that space yet. I needed to still be heard. It was healing, and I still needed that space. And then it brought to my attention that I wasn't listening to him. And where I was still stuck on, well, every time I ask you, you don't talk about it, you suppress it, you don't want to share, and I constantly ask you, and basically you ignore those questions. So as time had went on in this, like he had remained suppressed in it and got more and more kind of aggravated in that situation, to where he's like, well, this just doesn't work for me because I'm not being heard. And so I'm like, but if you don't tell me these things and you don't like stop me or these sorts of things, and I'm not to know. But he let it build up to the point where he was aggravated about it and became aggravated with me because I wasn't listening to him. In that process, somebody that I had also connected with very deeply last summer had returned, and we had been reconnecting in a whole new and different way, and him going through things. And I had been going through this situation with this person saying, okay, it's not an alignment. And here it was, the deepest I connected, and was going through that separation of that pull on the soul. And so this person that had returned really kind of said, well, would you like to talk and offer an ear? And so I said, sure. And so I was sharing with him about what I was feeling going on with this other person. And needing to be heard, right? And the funny thing is, I'm in my feminine role now. He's in his masculine role, coming in. Like, I'm coming into my feminine, he's coming into his masculine. And we're supporting each other in these new and different ways that we never did last time, because I was masculine, he was feminine. So those roles changed since summer of last year to now with our reversal of that. But what was interesting was, as I'm sharing, he would cut me off, and he wasn't listening, and he was repeating what I said, and he wasn't fully present, and he was trying to understand, granted, but it was his way of communicating that he also is being put in a position to learn to listen himself. It took me saying, I need you not to interrupt me, and I need you to be quiet so I can speak. I just need to be heard. I don't need to be fixed. I just need to dump this and just an ear. And so then he kind of got it from his side and became a win-win, because he needed to draw his energy back for receiving, in a sense, and then just holding the space for me. And I even told him, I said, well, this is exactly what I'm being told I'm doing over here. And this is where I say you can have two people operating from one that's taught me how to express, basically, that became the master listener, that then basically then triggered his suppression, that put me in the role of the universe smacking me upside the head one way or another, saying, you got to listen more, to then creating a situation on the opposite end of living it out in the opposite direction of being the person that's asking for what I needed and to be heard. And then they need to listen. This is, you can't make this stuff up the way it aligns like that. And it's to bring balance within our individual selves so that we can then harmonize these relationships. So then on top of that, is this is all playing out and kind of going out, and it was bringing up a lot of stuff for me with everything I'm going through anyway. A whole new person comes into the mix and our communication. Then basically, I was talking to her and telling her kind of like this scenario. And then we had our own scenario where she had like a moment of something that was really intense in her life, and she needed to be heard. And so she contacted me to tell me about it. And then she didn't tell me then, but the energy changed. She backed up, and I knew something was wrong, and we didn't communicate about it because I had no clue what was going on. So then we had talked several days later, and the whole thing got brought up again. And basically at this time she said, well, I heard you say this, because there was some new stuff developing that I was still going through that same push-pull with that first person I was talking about. And she said, like, I needed you to listen, and you weren't listening, and you cut me off and started talking about your parents or something. I don't even know what it was. I said, well, here's the thing. First of all, I listened to her, like, and she's also a master listener, but she also has suppressed certain things, even though she can express pretty well. And later that night, we got a chance to talk deeper, and I was explaining to her, well, here's the thing. I can't deliver for you what you need if you don't tell me. And rather than in that moment of you taking it personal, bothering you, backing up and creating this distance, had you told me that you just needed to listen, we could have resolved this then. And then at that way, it becomes a win-win. But both people have to be willing to hear and listen, and also to know that this is harmonic in this exchange. And if it's not, and one person is not like able to do it harmonically with you, like the very first person that came into my life, he basically exited himself, did some radical shifts from coming in to be like my, rescuer in the dark night of the soul, to then like ripping out and leaving me back in that darkness because of how the connection was so connected so deeply. And so then, I have this other teachers that are sharing and showing me like both sides of this fence and both sides of this coin and living it out, to the point where I kind of realized a couple things. I realized that I had gotten enough into my feminine to attract basically to me master listeners, right? And then in that, I was able to have a place to express, to learn how. But things move quickly in this. So as I did that, then it illuminates their suppression. They need to express coming back to me. And then I needed to learn how to hold space that I had not done from an empathetic way ever in my life before, because I didn't know what it was like to need empathy to that level, because I never experienced needing it to that level. Now, these two people both thought I should have mastered that skill by telling me once they told me. And what they didn't get is that once you see it is 75%, you got to go through it, have patience with, and be shown how to and hold space for you to also then practice out the principle. What I did in all of that then is share with them both sides and say, this is what's happened and this is where I'm at, and I apologize for anything in my part of any of this. It was not intentional, and that kept me and the second person going, and the other person has kind of exited. And even though I had left a voicemail just expressing my part, because I knew that was the right thing to do, and I left that clean slate. And so anyway, though, what I also did is took that even a step further, is that I realized there's a person that had been in my life for about 3 years, and she had been kind of filtering through the cycle of this happening. And I realized with what I had going on that I was doing that to her, kind of dumping to her, and she had her own thing, and I wasn't even saying like, how are you, and da-da-da, and it just didn't even cross my mind. And I realized, oh my God, that's what I've done to her. And she never had a problem with any of it. And basically, I reached out to her and apologized and said, this is what's happening. The universe is smacking me over the head to get this concept of me listening. And therefore, like, I've been suppressed and I've been expressing. You've held that space for me, but I've not held it back in return. And I apologize for that. And based on that, going forward, I will do my very best to hold that space for you as well. And then basically what was really cool is because I didn't even tell her anything about her. And then she saw her own reflection and said, well, I suppress. And she said, as far as your expression, she named off a long list of why she accepted that in me and what she saw in me and how she knew how I processed that way and how all these things. And it made such a beautiful full circle in all of this and in all of them. And I'm still connected with all the rest. And we're doing this harmonic dance between just these energies of learning how to communicate. And so I wanted to come here and share that with you today. So what I'd like to do now is share with you a post that I made on my personal Facebook page that was my full circle processing of this whole concept of what I wrote about. That was my own reflection and my own journaling with it. If you're going through anything like this on any lesson, please let me know of the contrast of those polarities. But I feel like that this being heard and listening is a huge one for people right now. And that, again, it calls for the communication to bring unification within ourselves and to bring harmonization in all relationships. And so there was a post that I made with like a quote kind of thing on it that said, sometimes you have to cut ties with people that aren't good for you. And the love isn't lost, but the communication isn't healthy. So it's time to move on. And with that, I had made my own post of like my writing for that, and and this is what I wrote. It was easier to share it with you than try to explain it to you, and I think this will sum up what it is that I just said. And it basically said, to create harmonic relationships, practicing effective communication skills is a must. Typically, one person wants to be heard, requiring the other to be empathetic, compassionate, with good listening skills. But to be healthy, both have to learn how to hold space for the other. Most often, people communicate on two different love channels, having two different conversations because one or both is not able to express their desires or share their feelings, much less hear and understand the needs of the other. This causes, This causes one's thoughts, feelings, and emotions to build up, creating resentment and anger with the other person. Healthy relationships must implement this idea of effective communication. Otherwise, it induces toxic triggers, bringing up old wounds to the surface to be seen, felt, or heard and healed. However, most people run away rather than take personal accountability for their own issues. If you practice these principles and the other person is not willing to get on the same page as you, then it's time to set a healthy boundary and respect yourself, because that's how we teach others to show up for us and to teach them how to treat ourselves. And that becomes the reason why you attracted that person to begin with. So you can basically see this within yourself and learn how to find this sense of respect within, desire to be able to want to be heard, but then being compassionate enough to listening to the other person. And I just want to say that's where I was compassionate enough to listen to everyone. I was also took responsibility enough to connect with everyone from a healthy state. And what I really took away from that is, if I go forward, as I go forward in this harmonic balance in all my relationships, and I'm proving I'm doing it in all relationships, twin flame or not, it's inside, and it happens with everyone. That's our reflection. That if somebody is not willing to both be in this healthy form of communication, holding space for each other, and able to get on board, there might be more times where I need to listen for that person, or might be more times I need to be heard, or different people, different parts. However, if it doesn't become this harmonic exchange or a win-win within the dynamic, then you're basically the one compromising your experience and being robbed of the ability to stay in neutrality and balance within yourself, because it's the dynamic with the reunion or the dynamic of the other person that, if it's not in harmonization with them, they pull you out of alignment with yourself. And that's you taking back that power, and you staying in control of your own truth, and you knowing what you need to do, and do it with love and respect, and do it from your heart, not your head, and take away the concept and the ideas of the fear of facing that, and having to suppress that, to express that and share your truth. Then, facing these fears will allow you then to find the freedom in it, as I'm always saying. So make sure to let me know if this has been helpful to you, and if you're going through anything similar. And check out that video that I mentioned. And then also, this is a great mirror exercise concept. So I'm going to put a link below to my Heal Your Wounds Mirrored Reflection exercise that you can do, that can help you see not only in your twin flame, but everyone around you, your lesson within what it is they're teaching you. And for you to take that accountability, transform that, show up for that, take responsibility, and treat yourself like you want to be treated, and they'll start to treat you the same way. So I'll see you in the next video. May you always face your fears, find freedom, and glow forward on fire. Namaste.